Hey, what's up guys? This is Brian from Whisper Status 74. Today will be another video where we compare two displays against each other using ratings.com's tools option on their website. Please think about supporting them and becoming an insider for a fee per month to get early access to their reviews and vote into what they review next. It's an awesome website. A lot of us would be lost without them for all the extra work that they do analytically and breaking down certain numbers that many of us would never have access to. That said, what we're going to look at today is not the Z9F versus the Z9D, as this would be a video about itself or large enough to be its own video. I'm going to show you the Z9D simply because to give you some context of what we're talking about here. What I'm going to compare is the Z9F to the 950G, which is, in my opinion, one of the best LEDs this year, but has been overlooked. I think it's Sony's fault that it's overlooked. They didn't offer a whole lot of information about it. It got killed for blooming out on YouTube and in the forums, which could be part of the panel lottery, could be considering one particular size over another. I do think it's because of the panel lottery. But it's out there, and I think it hurt the 950G this year. However, the 950G has dropped in price. It is an excellent display, and I'm going to compare that to the Z9F. Before I do that, I'm going to compare the Z9D to the Z9F and tell you why the Z9F got absolutely killed last year, even though it's a Master Series display and is still very expensive, but was very expensive. The Sony Z9D, for context, was a excellent LED. It was back when LEDs were focused primarily on eradicating blooming, 100%, local dimming, very aggressive, very little blooming. I had the Sony 940E, and blooming was absolutely minimal. And they weren't so worried about wide viewing angle, and they were more focused on peak brightness, contrast, namely, and black level. And the Z9D did have a slow pixel response, at least on the 65-inch. I'm sorry, the 65-inch, which made it a tough choice for gaming, but it is considered a legendary display. Why the Z9F was absolutely crushed in the reviews is for this reason alone. Now, if you watch the reviews between these two, we'll go through this in another video, what really set them apart and what made the Z9F very undesirable, besides being extremely expensive at the time, was this. The Z9F is actually better in nearly every single category, except for one very, very important one. Contrast. So let's keep that in mind, guys. The contrast ratio is night and day. Huge difference. Now, what this ended up becoming was that the Z9F actually had some blooming to having a less effective local dimming, and also the contrast ratio did show where the Z9D was absolutely black across the black bars. There was very little blooming, if any. The Z9F for a Master Series did have some blooming. Not flashlighting, guys, blooming around, around some bright objects, which also made the black bars a little bit lighter than the Z9D, which was a disappointment for many of us, and a lot of us killed it, including myself, because the Z9D was so legendary. But what's interesting is the Z9F beats it in just about every other way, except for one of these most important ones, which is contrast ratio. I mean, it's a huge drop in contrast ratio, but it did cause a trend in current LEDs where the contrast ratio has been lower across the board, including some of the Samsungs, the higher-end Samsungs, Sony, even the Vizio has a lower contrast ratio, but not by this much, as they did try to address viewing angle, which is important, but not as important to many of us enthusiasts. But what's funny is it's amazing how we look back and some displays are legendary, but the numbers aren't quite as high as we thought. In my opinion, I always thought the Z9D was a lot brighter than the Z9F. It isn't. It's not even as bright in what's it called, a standard definition, SDR, in comparison to HDR. But just giving you the context of the Z9D, which so many of us hold in the highest regard, but are much harder on the Z9F and the 950G. And I think this will shed some interesting light on the 950G. So we're going to go back in. We're going to change this to the 950G. Okay, now you have the 950G on the right, the Z9F on the left. Now the Z9F is still quite a bit more expensive. It's considered a Master Series, where the 950G is their higher end, mid to high end LED, which the 900E and 900F all followed in. I wish they had more options for Sony, but Sony has kind of married the 930G, 930E, the 900F. They've kind of married them all together to give you one choice, which some of you love, some of us don't like, but this review is going to show you the differences between the two and how close they actually are. And another reason for doing this is the Z9F falls. Many of you want the moniker of that Master Series display. The Z9G itself is still about $13,000, and to me it's just not worth it. But the Z9F is still pretty beautiful, and you're seeing it there, you're seeing it drop. It's still very expensive though, and I'll show you why I think the 950G is very, very close. So we're gonna go down. We are gonna look at the prices really quickly. Prices for the Z9F at 75 is still about $5,000. In comparison to the price of the Z9, or I'm sorry, the 950G. I don't know why it moves me like that. Hold on one second. So $5,000 versus, survey says, $2,500. So for those of you that think about buying the Z9F as it drops, the price disparity is still gigantic. I'm sure it's a little bit different for 65, but let's look at how close they are together, guys, together. Mixed usage, 8.5 to 8.4. On the left-hand side is your Z9F. Right-hand side is your 950G. Now these numbers, all of these numbers here, sorry, the ones that most people look at and then just fade out from, they do have validity. They just basically round out the whole review. But the review in Artings is really in the writing. It's in the sub box, it's in the writing. Yes, these numbers are important. They do round it all out. But if you consider the differences in price between these two displays, you know, $5,000 to $2,500, look at how close they are. And arguably, I'd see that, you know, they definitely have very similar attributes. So going through the usage, going through the comparisons between movies, slight edge to the 900 or the 950, TV shows, slight edge to the to the Z9F. Very slight edges within a few points, which doesn't mean a lot, especially when it comes into using comparing the same company versus itself. They're very similar looking. Legs are in for the Z9F. I'm not sure if you can switch them out. Not a huge fan of these stands, by the way. You can always go back and look at these at your leisure, but we're going to go through them together. What's interesting, though, is the contrast ratio is back up there, kind of where it belongs. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm showing you the local dimming as well, but look at the contrast ratio. 1730 to 1 without local dimming on, 4421 with local dimming off still, with local dimming enabled, 3379 to 1, 4833 to 1. Huge advantage for the 950G, especially for a display that is constantly ridiculed for blooming. Now, mentioning blooming, the local dimming numbers are not super high, 8.0 to 7.0. Now, the local dimming on the Z9F was considered to be not quite as good as the Z9D, but you're also going to keep a lot of the shadow detail that the more aggressive local dimming crushes. But the Z9F has the edge here in local dimming. The 950G does have still good local dimming, not quite as good. Peak brightness, very close numbers in comparison. The Z9F is quite a bit brighter, but also nearly $3,000 more. But it shows you that the Sony 950G has jumped in peak brightness from the 900E and the 900F, getting closer to the Z9D's numbers. which is why I mentioned it was like the 930E and the 900E were kind of combined. HDR numbers get pretty impressive, maxing out at about 1200, where the HDR brightness for the Z9F is about 1640 for the highest, 1630. So very, very close. You know, quite a bit higher for the Z9F in terms if you want to really go by numbers, but you know, that's pretty good for the 950G considering also the value that it provides and how much cheaper that display is. Now, when I see the Z9F in store, it actually is very impressive, especially in a bright room, but it is interesting how close the 950G is for the money. Gray uniformity, not amazing for either. Again, that's a panel by panel basis. Black uniformity, a little bit better, which, you know, again, is panel by panel with local dimming, which is interesting, but local dimming shows the number is 8.7.8.9, which again talks about blooming, as you can tell by the pictures. Reflections, I believe the 950G, these numbers are killing me, the Z9F, you know, that was kind of the big knock on it, was focusing mostly on reflections and passing that down to the 950G, but the 75-inch has a better viewing angle. Tough thing about these websites too, guys, they only really review these smaller sizes just to keep prices down. Pre-calibration, you know, Sony's known for being so accurate, a little bit more accurate out of the box with the 950. Post-calibration, they got it closer by a point. Negligible, obviously. Now, what's funny, though, is the upscaling. Now, I believe they shared the same chip. I could be wrong. I thought the Master Series had the higher-end chip. If not, the upscaling is considered the same here. Sony is well known for their upscaling, which is big for many people if you want to watch from a cable TV source. Not many of us watch standard definition DVDs these days, but for cable TV, 720p, 1080i, Sony is known for their upscaling. Color gamut, not as wide as many of the other companies. The Z9F has a wider color gamut. Color volume, again, wider. Again, Sony's known to be more accurate. You can see Samsung has a much wider color gamut, but many of you don't like the saturation that comes with that, or the unrealistic colors that come with that. Gradients, awesome. 9.2, 9.0. Very, very close. You can see a lot of these numbers are nearly identical, considering how much the Z9F costs. Now, if you have a Z9F, the Z9F is better. And don't think if you're watching this and you have a Z9F, I'm saying that it's better. I'm just saying how close they are is unbelievable. Response time is nearly identical. Again, what Sony is known for, except 100% response time is better. Awesome for gaming and moving objects. Black frame insertion, don't use that much. Now we're going to get into some of the parts that you guys do care about. Again, these numbers are nearly identical. Sony is known to have its best processing, doesn't judder much at all. It also has that 24 picture setting, 24 FPS lock that is on their TVs. It does make a big difference. You can change that in the settings, by the way. No variable refresh rate. Getting down to the inputs. Input lag lower on the 950G. The difference being here, very much like the 900F, we'll get to that in a second. We're going to go by input lag here. Input lag numbers are very good at 1440p, 60 hertz, 4K 60 hertz. Not the lowest, but still good. They do have 444 chroma, which is important, which a lot of people overlook. If you're running a PC, that is going to be important to you. 1080p, 120 hertz, 11 milliseconds. That's incredible. This is what some of you guys need to, like the 900F, they abandoned this. 1440p at 120 hertz, that was available on the 900F, and the Z9F not available on the 950G. So if that's important to you, And obviously 4K at 120 hertz is not available because it's not an HDMI 2.1. So 1440p, much like the 900F, if that's what you want, 900F is going to be your only choice, as well as the Z9F. No VRR. Supported resolutions, that we're going to follow up on. Here is, you can see it. They do have 1080p, 60 hertz, obviously, 444 chroma. 1080p, 120 hertz is native support. 1440p at 60 hertz, the 900F or the 950G does have. That's a custom resolution in your control panel. 1440p at 120 hertz. Again, guys, if you want that, it is not available on the 950G. It is only available on the 900F and the Z9F. I am not sure about the OLEDs, but I imagine it probably follows the same thing this year. Don't know why. That leads me to believe it might not be the same chip. Who knows? I do like that the inputs, unlike my display, which is the 900F, that they're all full bandwidth now. They weren't before. I'm glad that they are. A lot of you guys want to know about the audio. I use a receiver. I don't use the ARC, but for you guys to know, they do have digital out. Everything's pretty much the same here except for the adapter required for the the 950G. There is more audio down here. Dolby Vision. I do believe the Dolby Vision implementation is probably better, unless they may have the same chip, but I do know it's better slightly than the 900F. Dolby Vision support, I don't think is as good as, say, an LG's native chip-based support, but still good to have. Again, full bandwidth, HDMI 2.0 is on all four, unlike on older displays that only had it on HDMI 3 and 4. Big deal to many. It's just a convenience. Better to have it than not. Heading down to EARC support. Yes, audio pass-through and Dolby Atmos via True HD. So if that's important to you guys, it is included. Sound quality is better natively through the Z9F. And that's the comparison, guys. Very, very similar displays. And I kind of wanted to show that to really show you how good the 950G is, considering that it's $2,500 at 75 inches versus the much more expensive Z9F. The Z9F drops a lot in price, like really drops, then yeah, grab it. But for right now, what this really illustrates is how close the the 950G is not only to the Z9F, but in many ways to the actual Z9D that so many of us hold in high regards. I don't buy all the blooming that's online. Again, that's a panel by panel basis, and I do believe a lot of that is the panel lottery, guys. If you're looking for a Sony, the 950G is really the only choice right now as far as LEDs. Check it out. Do this comparison for yourself. Compare it to the 900F, which we've done on the channel. Compare it to the Z9D. I think you'll be surprised that the 950G, which gets killed a lot, actually hangs with both the Z9F and the Z9D, which is actually pretty surprising. But I was shocked at how close these two displays are. Give this a look on the tools. Think about supporting ratings.com, and tell me what you think about this in the comments. Were you considering the Z9F? If you have a Z9F, please let me know in the comments. The 950G, though, as it drops more and more, I think it's an excellent choice and really the only choice for Sony this year. Let me know what you think in the comments. I appreciate you guys very much. Love you guys. I will talk to you soon. Let me know what you think between these two, and I'll see you in the comments. Take care.